Good evening, buonasera. My name is Anthony Tamburri. I'm Dean of the John D. Calandra Italian American Institute, which is part of the City University of New York. Not New York University, as the Italians sometimes mix up. No, it's a pleasure for me to be here. This is a wonderful collaboration. We've had the Calandra Institute and the Casa Italiana have collaborated over the years. It's been wonderful, and I'm glad today. Let me just say that normally Dr. Stefano Albertini would be up here saying hello to you all, welcoming you all. Unfortunately, he is toiling away in Florence, Italy. And so we should feel a little bit of pain for Stefano as he's toiling away in the hills just below Fiesole. But no, he sends his best, and he's sorry he can't be here because I know he's a big fan of the Bongiornos, and I also know he's a great supporter of Italian-American culture in all its various manifestations. And for that reason, it's really symbolic for us to be here because it is a type of coming together of both Italy, Casa Italiana, and Italian America, the John D. Calandra Italian American Institute. So you're in for a treat. This is a really wonderful film. I think that, and then we're going to chat afterwards, but right now I'd like to give the microphone for a minute to Marylou Bongiorno, half of the Bongiorno team, and who's going to just speak very briefly and come on up here so they can very briefly about the film, and then we're going to watch the film.
Thank you. So Anthony has been with us since when? Anthony? That's right. That's right. So we are very deeply grateful, not only to Anthony and the Calandra Institute, but to Stefano, Julian, Chiara, and the team, Kostya, and the team here at Casa Italiana, because this was the place that I was at when I was at NYU Grad Film. So it feels like coming back to home. The actors, many of the actors are here tonight, so we're going to include them in the discussion. This film is our tribute to the idea of ritorni, of people going back to Italy or wanting to go back to Italy. And it is a prologue of sorts to what's coming, which is the film that will be shot in Italy. And one of our patrons, you'll see a long list of people that should be thanked, and I hope you all recognize yourselves in those credits. But one person is Sam Patty, who is also toiling away in Italy right now, in Calabria. So he could not be here tonight, and so I do want to acknowledge him and wonderful people here, and Joe Shame, all the people who have made this possible for us. Thank you. Grazie. Enjoy.
Let me just, first of all, congratulations. I think it was either 2002 or 2003 when you guys won the Palm Beach International Film Festival with Little Kings. The Little Kings is a film, unfortunately, that's not in distribution, but it's a wonderful, wonderful film, and that's where some of the actors, you see those of us who saw Little Kings see them 20 years later, and two of them are still bickering. No, this is a new old theme, the ritorno. If you study Italian immigration, you realize that, or you know that over 4 million Italians came to the United States between 1880 and sort of 1924, and a good half of them went back. Some went back to stay, some went back and came back and did a little bit of commuting for a few years and so on and so forth. And then we sort of never really heard much about it. What we did hear about was that many of the immigrants didn't want to go back because of la miseria, and a lot of us grew up hearing about la miseria, right? And then there was this book that came out about 30 years ago, Under the Tuscan Sun, that seemed to have revived the notion of return, but also it brought forth a newer idea, and that is the non-Italian who would go back, right? And that gave more attention. Italy sort of picked up on it a little bit, and now there's a big campaign in Italy that's called Il Ritorno delle Radici, or Il Turismo delle Radici, the return to the roots, or the tourism of roots. And we see it now. We've seen it in the last 10 or 15 years of these small villages that are selling houses for €1, but of course you have to spend 30 or 40,000 euros that are local to make sure the houses get caught up, whatever. This is a nice new take on that new theme, because this is where the contemporary third millennium, we're in the third millennium, the contemporary immigrant, 20, whatever it is, contemporary 2023, is thinking of going back for those old reasons, those reasons from the 1890s and the 1900s, because they miss their country, right? They miss what Italy represented to them, and so on and so forth. And of course, here it's complicated by the fact that Nonno has this horrible diagnosis. But the film is fun. It's fun to watch. For me, it was fun to watch. I watched it a couple of times. And there are some things that, for me, debunk some of the stereotypes. I think it's, I like the idea that it's from Lombardy, because it debunks that whole idea of Italians, immigrants being only from southern Italy, which is not true. Actually, in like 1910, there were about 40% were from northern Italy and 40% were from southern Italy, the population here in the United States. So we have that. I love, I just thought it was great, the whole religious issue. This is something that's dear to my heart. The fact that people think that Italians are only Catholic, can only be Catholic, otherwise you can't be Italian, you're not a real Italian. There are two things that I like about it here. One, that we have three different religions mentioned, and they all have the same God, which is, of course, seems to be the most logical thing for anyone who believes, and believes in a good way. I editorialized a little bit here. The second thing is, I love the way Emma makes the sign of the cross. I don't know if you noticed, but it's backwards and with her left hand. It's great. It's wonderful. There's that comment there. I would say it's a comment on the quote unquote author's part. I would say it's a comment there which speaks to that. So the religion was really, really good. We get a wine lesson, which is wonderful. We learn about how wine is made, whatever. And then, of course, there's just this wonderful lesson on Italian cinema. And I'm going to also this is another thing that I think is going on here. Italian cinema didn't die. It never died. It just changed. And it changed really, some of us would say, with Nanni Moretti. And I love the fact that they introduce Italian cinema and the little lesson on Italian cinema with Nanni Moretti. Because Nanni Moretti, who really aims for the future, if we look at the history of Italian cinema, is harking back in these little clips to the old movies. The dance he does, indeed, speaks to the older movies. And so I think that's one of the really poignant, there are many poignant things I mentioned, but I think it's one of the most poignant things here is as far as the comment we can infer, the comment on the part of the directors, and that is that Italian cinema never died, that it just changed. And I think Nanni Moretti and then all the others that have followed, I'm thinking of Vilma Labate and Sorrentino and so on and so forth, right? These are people who have continued to make some wonderful, wonderful movies. This is clearly parent-child. It's parent-child, and it's also parent or grandparent-grandchild. And we're given some hints here. It's going to be, I'm really curious to see how this plays out in a longer version. But we're given the hints about the different generations, and it's not always the parent with the child, with the grandchild, that the parent is always the sort of negative relationship. We see that, in fact, in this one, it's not. And I think that I like that. I like that very much. I can go on, but I'm not. Of course, it's all about family. There's some language that I like here. There's an expression that he's hard-headed but good-hearted. I like the sort of the assonance and resonance that we have with that. There are a couple of other expressions that I thought were right on. I thought they were keen. And I'm going to stop here. because otherwise I'm going to talk about the self-absorbed husband, and we won't beat up on him because he's had a hard time, poor thing.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
Questions, observations? We're willing to take. I'll work the microphone.
Do you need the mic?
How many have thought about going back to Italy? And that's, you know, so I asked that question because it's a big deal here. It's a big challenge here. Nonno says we can make it work, and Giovanna, make it work. You got a little bit more, you got to be better than make it work, right? It's more than just breaking even. How are we going to live there, and so on and so forth. Nino. Oh, sorry.
I love the characters, the relations, and the events. Can you give us a hint where you're going to go from there?
Thank you. Yeah, we're working on that now. We tried to put those hints, as you mentioned, in it. The rocky relationship between Anna and Rick is one of them. Whether the character that is beautifully portrayed by Grace here, Emma, whether she's going to go deeper into filming when she goes into Italy, whether surprisingly the character of Rick, who's the least that wants to go, may find some success as a comedian in Italy. These are all, you know, some of the places that we're exploring. And I know that Bob had mentioned Robert Cuccioli, who plays Nonno Francesco, who is right here. He mentioned, will Nonno, named Francesco, want to make a pilgrimage to Assisi? You remember talking about that, right? Is he looking for a miracle? So there's a lot for us to explore in the longer version. It was the idea here was to get the tension going and to get your, you know, get you interested in finding out more and caring about these people. And also Giovanna, you know, having to uproot to be a woman who is Black in Italy and going with a same-sex marriage, which, you know, carries with it, unfortunately still, in parts of the world, its challenges.
Ditto.
Did this actually take place already, or is it going to take place, this move?
It will. It's coming.
You haven't done it yet?
No.
Ah, okay. All right. I have the other
If you
question.
have ideas, we'll welcome them.
Oh, all right. Okay. I have another question about the grapes. He said there's a lot of mold. Does that affect the wine at all?
The mold on the grapes. I'm not the one who can talk about that, unfortunately.
Well, he says that, you know, I mean, we have it in the script that it can affect it. Are you talking about the spotted lanternfly threat that's coming? Because that's the one that.
Well, he showed a bunch of grapes that had a lot of mold on them.
Yes, I thought.
So
Right.
does that affect the wine process, or don't they use them, or what?
Well, the manager said it would affect the amount of sugar that's produced in the grape.
That's all.
And so therefore, once the grape is fermented, you won't get a lot of alcohol out of it.
All right. Okay.
So, but I'm not an expert. So.
All right. Okay. I'll.
As soon as it's funded. Yes, as soon as that's what we're in the process of doing right now. We're very eager to go. Thank you for asking. Dale.
What I enjoyed was kind of a story that wasn't really told, but is part of the entire immigrant story and any culture, is that it's a family business. And therefore, everybody is part of it and everybody's essential. So the entire operation would have to move, not just the one person's whim, you know.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
That was important to us.
Yeah, that was important. And in some of the events that are coming up with screenings of this film, which some are in like Napa Valley on some vineyards. They're family owned. That has come up in the discussion. And we also want to broaden it to include families that are in business together that aren't necessarily winemakers, because the family business is an interesting dynamic. Absolutely.
But that's also part of the sort of narrative strategy, it seems, that's taking place, and that is New World setting Old World ideas, right? So it's a family, and it's a patriarch, but it's not an overbearing patriarch. So that's the new part, right? The old part is the patriarch. The new part is not the overbearing patriarch, and I think that plays in also with the references to the films. And that, of course, we have to see how the feature works out. But the same thing, because there's one point where the granddaughter says, as Nono is singing finally, the granddaughter says, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You sound so depressing, like a neo-realist film." And so there's that issue as well. So what about Italy's old filming, Italy's new filming? And of course, the scene that they highlight is from a very depressing film. But it's also about parent, child, father, son, from the ladri di biciclette, the bicycle.
Yeah. And I will say, maybe, Grace, can I put you on the spot? Do you want to see something about watching those films? Because Grace was the perfect actress who actually watched all of those films. Here you are.
Thank you. I don't think I had to come up here, but I did. So I was totally new to watching these neo-realist Italian films, and they really just blew my mind. And kind of like Emma, I did think they were a bit depressing, especially the bicycle thief one, because I haven't seen a young boy, I think he was like 5, 6, struggle like that with his dad. But it was a very great learning experience, and I watched the films because Emma's obsessed with the films. Again, they're really sad, but it's a part of history, and it's a part of Italy's entertainment history of the past, and I'm glad that we got to incorporate the films in our movie. I definitely learned a lot. I learned a lot about my culture, my heritage, and it just made me more proud to be part of this film. So thank you. Everyone should watch the films. Please explore films that are not American, not English. Get used to reading subtitles, because the most beautiful films are foreign films, from what I've seen. So, thank you.
And I will say that the L'uva Fogarina is usually, if you go on YouTube, you'll see very spirited versions. And I have to say that, Bob, do you want to say something, Bob? I'm putting you on the spot about your rendition, which was very soulful and different from what is usually depicted. Want to say something? Okay. Robert Cuccioli.
Thank you. Yeah, everyone that I had seen was a very jubilant dance party. Every one of these, every rendition that I saw, and there was one who was the female vocalist that did it. It was a little more soulful than the ones that I had heard, but we had talked about how to do that number, and especially with what Nono is going through. So to channel the emotion that he's dealing with through the song, and that's why we chose to do it that way. Yeah, thank you.
Dana.
What was the inspiration? How did this come to be, and how did it
I'm not loud enough. Oh, is this better?
I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, the camera
That's
can.
better, though.
Let me start again. What was the inspiration? And in terms of the film references, at what point did you integrate that in the process?
So Dana Glazer, another very talented filmmaker sitting next to Michael Goldberg, NYU alums. Thank you for being here and for all our conversations that we've had leading up to this. But the question is really the question of ritorni. We're coming back to that. We were intrigued, Jerome and I, by the idea of going back. We know of some people that have done it. I have family members who've done it years ago. And I see Victoria Wallace is here. Oh, another, come up to the front. Sit, your chair is right here. So this is Zia Giovanna. Welcome. Glad to have you. So back to the idea of, yes, what would make someone go back? I know that my parents both came from Italy. So my father very young, my mother, when she married in her 20s. So the idea was like, has that always lingered? Do you want that to be there? Do you want to explore it? Can you explore it? Is it a realistic option? So that's why we wanted to thrust this family into the midst of that. In terms of the films, and I mean, they're our favorites. We wanted very much to bring them to light, as Grace just mentioned, to celebrate them, to incorporate them, and what better way than to have an impassioned young woman who is very into film history and a filmmaker herself. So she is making a film within a film. Yes.
Their return was more of a financial responsibility. It was not a willing one. Is that right?
Sort of.
Well, do you want to say something?
Yeah. I think the return is a sentiment, it's an emotional one, clearly, because the film opens with a horrible diagnosis, and whatever thoughts that character may have had, that character is pushed over the top to make that decision by the diagnosis. Yeah,
But at
that's
one
the way,
point
yeah.
in the shed, the point was we can't afford to pay these bills any longer. So therefore, I assume that was a financial strain.
Yeah, but
and moved them to to Italy. And by the way, toward the end of the film, with the negative response from the grandchild, do we assume in the sequel? I assume you're doing a sequel to this. That are we to interpret their experiences in Italy? I mean, it hasn't happened, but are we to interpret that toward the end of the film? You cut. So what's the next?
to be
move?
continued. And it had ... No, but I think, but to get back to, for me, it was pretty clear that Nonno is pushed. That it's obviously something there, right? I mean, I think that whenever you move away from your home country for a long time and you don't know how long you're going to be, whatever, you always think back to it. I don't have that experience. I was born here in the United States, so I don't have the experience of what it means to go back to Italy. I go to Italy, right? But if you were born in Italy or in any other country and you left somewhere near the age of reason, 12, 13, 14 years old, it's much more, I would submit, imprinted into your, into your brain, than if you're 4, 5, or 6 years old. Yeah. And I will tell a story about a friend of mine who came here when he was 9 or 10 and lost his Italian accent, had wonderful, clean English, and he married a woman who came here when she was 14. So they started speaking Italian to each other. And about 5, 6 years later, I noticed that my friend had an accent all of a sudden again. He picked up his accent.
That's wonderful. The dynamic I want to bring up again of the family business is something that we discussed with the actor, Mark Giordano. Do you want to say something, Mark, about being part of a family business?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. On a personal note, I worked for many years with my father in a family-owned business that was started by my grandparents who immigrated separately and met in New York. My mother's parents and my father married into the business and then ran the business, and then I worked with him. So when Marylou presented this project to me, I said, holy shit, I'm playing my dad. And it really, I really didn't have to think much about the character because I'm used to family animosity within the construct of a family business. So I just kind of eased right into that one. And I did work with Marylou and Jerome for the first time over about 20 years ago when we did the film Little Kings that you referenced. And Rita, who plays Anna, we played husband and wife in that movie as well. So we're still bickering 20 years later, which is, I guess, normal, right? Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming again.
And before, I want to make sure. So, Victoria, would you want to step up for a minute? And I'm going to ask you a little bit about, so we've worked together several times, but bringing this character to life, do you want to say something about your
experience? Sure. Hi, everybody. So sorry I'm late, but I'm sure the film looked amazing. I can't wait to see it, all the details. This was a great experience for me. I'd been working with Marylou and Jerome for a couple of years now. And I always loved how thought-provoking and somewhat political the work. Yes, so I always appreciate that aspect. This was interesting to me. I just come from Italy maybe like a month before, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh, I can't wait to shoot something in Italy, and I think I heard from you maybe 2 days later. But this character was special to me because it allowed me to do a lot of research. I'm not mixed race, so I don't have that experience. But, you know, oftentimes I do find myself in situations where, you know, my point of view is you know, highlighted, or people really want to know, you know, how I navigate. So I really enjoyed the whole thing. I can't wait to see it. Yes, shoot in Italy. Do you have any specific questions, or does anyone else have any specific questions? Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm going to highlight Dr. Anthony Tobia, who is sitting in the back. Would you like to come please forward? Because we have worked together. Yes, Anthony, come on up. So Anthony and we have worked on the psychiatric aspects of our characters for how many years now, right? And the question was, why do we choose this? And that was the question we posed to you.
Yeah, so actually Marylou called me. So I work with Rutgers. I'm at Rutgers University. I'm a psychiatrist, background in internal medicine, so smidgen of that. And Marylou called me and kind of painted a picture of, I need something devastating, but chronic in nature, so things could kind of unfold with a slow burn. And at the time, my uncle had been just diagnosed. So I gave my uncle a call, and he was okay with my using his report in the script. Oh yeah. So there was a personal aspect to it, but it was a perfect fit with the question you asked, and that's really how we came up with it. So it was new to our family, and a week or so after getting that diagnosis, you had called, and it just fit perfectly with regard to what you were looking for. So it actually merged quite well for us. Yeah.
And also, I'm curious to then have you at some later point, if you work with Dr. Tobia and fellows medical students, they usually diagnose our characters through their lens, right?
Absolutely. 100%. I do want to make a comment, too, about the financial aspect of the motivation versus the emotional, and obviously the answer is both, because human behavior is never singular. I love the aspect of and how complexity of that. And I did not have anything to do with that part of it. That was all, that was beyond me. But I do want to identify that and acknowledge that was great. Yeah. So I loved it. Thank you.
So I know we have another question, yes. And we do have a reception after this, and I want to acknowledge that Bindi had very generously donated the desserts. So I hope you stick around for that. You'll have to ask our hosts, but the only thing I know is that because we brought the Bindi desserts, and they are definitely Italian. Yes. Yes.
On the note of Nonno wanting to go back to Italy, I could see as an immigrant who came in this country at the age of 22. I know that most of the people that came here around that age or above 15, as Professor Tamburri said, has always this idea lurking in the back that someday I'm going to go to Italy. Back, and those ideas most of the times come when you have some crazy problem with something and you say, this country stinks, I'm going to go back to Italy. Or if such president is going to come up again, I'm going to go back to Italy. You know, you use these, but I think Nonno here, he is cornered by fate, by whatever we want to call it, and he is looking to escape his fate, and he is just wants to get away from his life, from here. That's how I see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting.
You get a microphone?
I don't need it. I don't think I need it. I'm a little unclear about, I felt that he had already made the decision to go back. And that day,
Yeah, he did. He did.
he discovers that he has this serious illness.
Right. When he finds out he has the illness, it really galvanizes his, you know. I mean, he was thinking about it, he was talking about it, and then this puts him over the top. He's got to do it now. Ah, he was.
We're probably winding down, right? But
Can-
anyone else have? Oh, yes.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to ask, what part of, what vineyard in New Jersey was it supposed to have been taking
Yes.
place?
So I should mention James Abate is playing Giacomo. He is the actual vineyard owner, but he took the role of Giacomo in the film. He couldn't be here tonight because his daughter's graduating, but he will be at upcoming. And I really think, to sample his wines and to see it, his is Locust Hill is his vineyard, and that's where we shot in Red Bank. We also shot at Old York, so some of the pickup shots that you saw of the actual wine processing were done there. And I have to say, New Jersey vineyards, really fantastic. I had no idea that the wines and how many are owned by family businesses, which is really fascinating.
One more question. Oh, one more. Did you feel that maybe when he wanted to go back also to perhaps die there? He was born there. Maybe he wanted to go back to die there.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Especially at the end when he does his last.
Hi. I'm curious to see how this unfolds because I have to agree with this son-in-law, the accountant. You know, nobody knows about this illness. Nobody knows what his motivation is to go to Italy.
Yeah.
When they discover what it is, then I want to see how this unfolds.
I'd like to see that too.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting.
Because I don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, Lila has a question. So Lila makes a cameo in this. Very talented and wonderful Lila Robbins is here with us. Thank you, and allowed us to use that fabulous picture with that hat in Venice. Thank you.
It's the best work I've ever done. Congratulations, by the way. It's really wonderful. My question is about the diagnosis. It kind of struck me, would it be valuable or something to explore where he doesn't read out loud the diagnosis and that it remains a mystery to the audience as well, or at least in the longer version, where he's doing all this stuff, but you don't know why he's doing it. So it kind of keeps the audience going, well, what's his problem? What's his thing? What's his, in other words, that we don't know it right off the bat. The audience doesn't know, and that at some point in the film, there's a reveal of what it is. You know, I just thought that was just an idea.
Because my mind is racing with all those possibilities right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
That opens up a lot. Thank you.
Let me reference a sort of a lugubre note, that is, those who don't go back, who can't make, who never end up going back, and they do get, this has happened on a number of occasions that I know of, and they do get a diagnosis that is slow burning like this, they plan their burial in Italy. And I know a number of people who've done that. They plan their burial in Italy, and whether it's the entire corpse that goes back or the ashes that go back. And I've heard of 2 of those in the last month within my own circle of Italian Americans. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, there was someone that we know that passed before we wrote this, and it did get us thinking about it because the family was bringing the body back. And I thought, what would happen with that whole, going back there, and maybe they'd want to stay. This idea that she's staying, the mother, right? And do they want to stay? That's how it originated, actually. That was like the seed.
So I love the name Santangelo for a couple of reasons. I don't know where it came from, but there are a couple of references. Santangelo. There was a real politician named Santangelo who was actually in the 60s, quite progressive. Fred Santangelo, right? Fred's congressman, right. And then, so I don't, it just came, yeah.
Interesting. Peter.
I know in a lot of your films you have a political spin and a social commentary. You had Rust, which talked about poverty as an illness. This has, we're learning about wine. Will there be an exploration in the next part as well? And I'm thinking healthcare in America versus in Italy. Like, is he going to pursue any kind
See,
of
that's
care?
that's a good topic. That's
Yeah.
really good to
Mhm.
explore.
Yeah, just
That's
curious.
nice. Well, definitely, he's got a disease, and we'd like him to explore going a miracle and see what the people around him think of that, and see what he thinks. Does it become more religious? Does
Sure. Because it is mentioned in the film. They mention universal health care as like a difference between us and them, but
Right.
how does that actually play out? It would be interesting.
Sure.
That's a great point. And also, of the people that I know that are actually going back, they are targeting places where there is adequate or better health care. Everyone, especially as they're aging, is conscious of the fact that they want to be taken care of. Yeah, that's a great point.
I was there for about 22 months in 2010. I came back in 2011. There's all kinds of things we talk about. I'm half Italian, but I had a second wife who was Italian. So there's a great number of blessings, and the child's schools were fantastic. Milan is where the best hospitals and universities and businesses are, people go to Milan for hospitals. And it's beautifully located in Europe, like Brussels or something. It's right in the middle of everything. And the South is, of course, beautiful in a lot of ways for the warmth of the people and the beauty of the country, the peninsula, But talk about all kinds of other stuff. It's the whole world is in apples and oranges. Mars, Venus. This country is going crazy, and Italy has problems too. So you've got to balance and navigate case by case, caso per caso. God bless you.
Absolutely. Thank you. I don't know if I'm keeping people from the reception, but we will be circulating. But if there's anyone else who has a burning question before we round up, then what do you think, Anthony? Do you want to close with anything? Yes, please.
Let me, first of all, let us thank our artists, the actors who made it tonight. Let's thank them also for being here. I sort of feel like I'm at Telluride, you know. And my wife and I went for like 10 years in a row to Telluride. Let us thank, of course, the Casa Italiana, Julian and crew, and a caro saluto to Stefano as he toils away in Florence. Thank you all. We'll see you upstairs at the reception.